other than coal mines ticket. So can get this to work. So just briefly, the Department of Primaries and Regional Development acknowledges that it stands on country, which always was and always will be Aboriginal land. We acknowledge traditional custodians of the land and waters, and we show our respect to elders past, present, and emerging. We are committed to providing places in which Aboriginal people are included socially, culturally, and economically through thoughtful and collaborative approaches to our work. So this is just briefly the contents. So yeah, here just quickly the rules. I won't get too tied up in this because there's just one of us here. So it's pretty easy to do. If you've got any questions, there's only one person that has to ask them, and you just go ahead and ask them. Raise your hand. I'm happy to interrupt whenever you've got an issue. Yeah, so it can be a bit of a process, the actual application, just actually applying for your to actually sit the exam. So that's a big part of what we'll go through today, the application process, exactly what we need around prerequisites, the portfolio, etc. How to actually do the application online. And then just go through the competency framework, exactly what competency we're looking for. So we use here in New South Wales are similar to the registered training organisation. So it's a pass-fail type model on different competencies you need to be competent in. The overall knowledge requirements, just the examination types. So we'll go through the 2 examinations and the questions you'll be asked, the types of questions you'll be asked. And then that final point, basic question assessment, the criteria. So that will just go through how we assess the questions, all the answers that we get. I'll go through some examples. So just the team briefly, you've met Chris Hamilton. We've also got the other members, Chris Hiller from Healing Industries, a consultant, and myself. We also have a couple other panel members who help out if there's ever any conflicts. So I've got Clive Jones, who's out at Peak. We've got Giorgio Del Rami, who's the GM out at RASP. And we've also got Jason Hughes, who's just finished up as the GM at Timingly. So all really experienced.
Yeah. GM at Tritton.
Jason Hughes? No, Jason Hughes is at Timingly.
Just started at Tritton this week.
Oh, he started Tritton this week, did he? Oh, well, thanks for letting me know. I didn't know that. Thanks. All right. So, so that's basic. So we've got a really experienced group of panel members. So being forward prepared. So yeah, we ask that you go on and read all the guidelines and prerequisites. Unfortunately, we run into a lot of issues with this. Like we actually get the applications, and whenever we find issues, we have to go back and forth with the candidate. So I also suggest, we'll get to it in a bit, but apply early, just so, we've got the dates there, just so if there are any issues in your application, we can come back to you and get them resolved quickly. I'd hate to have a situation where there's some glaring hole in your application and the time's expired. So I suggest put your application in early, just so if there's any back and forth we need to do, we can get it sorted. There's some hyperlinks on this, and this will all be available after this meeting and put on our website. But go and look at our guide and just look at all the sections when you look at the guide that relate to the MEM underground mines other than coal mine section. We've also got a specific guide for our ticket as well. And we've got some exam rules, etc. Look, we're going to cover a lot of that today, but if you want any further resources on it, there's also that available. Regarding your I know it sounds simple, but we actually run into this a fair bit. Just exactly what we need regarding identifying yourself, and all the qualifications, transcript information, certificates, etc. Yeah, just around that. There's all these like simple things. They're only simple, but and somewhat tedious, but they can really people often get caught up in them. So please make sure you just read those documents carefully, so that you've got the right ID checks and transcripts and everything else. So you can go to the workers portal. and register up in there. It takes a few days to like actually get you registered on the portal and everything else. So just give it sort of 3 business days. So I suggest, again, this process takes time. So you just got to get the application process happening earlier. We run this briefing session now here in October to make sure candidates are, given the time and preparation to get ready for the application. So the application ultimately closed on the 23rd of January, but as I say, that's over the Christmas. We've got the Christmas period, etc. over there. I'd suggest the earlier you get in, I keep saying this, but get in before the Christmas period. We've got plenty of time to address any issues. And then we get back from the Christmas period. Again, if there's any final issues, we can address them before that close date. And there's a quick shout out there to subscribe to Mine Safety newsletter, which we publish. So just regarding the dates for next year. So closing date, again, 23rd of January. The written exams on the 19th of March. We have our oral exam closing date on the 15th of May. So provided you pass the written, you can then apply to sit the oral. The oral exams on the 2nd of July. And then we allow for a second attempt at the oral exam. And the closing date for that's on the 2nd of October. And then the second oral exams on the 26th of November. So, look, we'll go through a little bit more of this later, but there are some statutory function guidelines. So we provide this for all statutory function ticket holders, and it's worth reading that. Here in New South Wales, there's an emergency preparedness course you'll need to complete. So if you haven't done that yet, please get cracking on that and get that completed. It's often a bit of a can be an issue for a lot of candidates. If it becomes a problem getting it done, get in touch with us early and let us know. Okay, so we can work something out, provided you give us plenty of time. If it's hard to get hold of an RTO, or the dates don't line up, or you can't get into a certain date or whatever, like, we will work with you. We want people sitting their ticket, and we don't want the fact you haven't completed the emergency preparedness course to be an impediment. But we just need you to just get in touch with us early and get on the front foot, please. You'll need to show a portfolio of evidence. That's described in the documents quite clearly, exactly what we require. I won't go into it. It's pretty self-explanatory what's actually in there. It's pretty self-explanatory, but just read through that and provide that portfolio. Again, that's just assessed on a simple competency basis. Have they provided or have they not? So we're not, it's not, don't feel that, say, for example, you just demonstrate you've written on a risk assessment around working from heights, and you think, oh my God, I didn't get the sign off of the general manager or someone like that to ascertain, to verify I was there. Look, we can live with that. We can potentially live with that. We just want to see evidence. As long as you've got like a supervisor and we can sort of verify that actually happened, we'll work with you on that. All right. Demonstrate, the relevant practical experience. Look, for the candidates here today, this shouldn't be too much of an issue, but that can be a problem for some people trying to chase up old managers, etc. But if you can get something, we need someone. If you've got overseas experience, etc. Again, let us know. We'll work with you, but you'll need the stat holder, for example, demonstrating when you did your underground time, etc. To be able to sign off on that. Someone who was holding that ticket to be able to say, yes, you did the drilling time, charging time, etc. We do have a process for candidates that hold a qualification or a unit competency that's not exactly specified as a prerequisite. So we can provide exceptions or exemptions to the underlying qualifications you need. And there's a process we go through if that's the case. So again, the earlier you get in, the better if you do need to apply for some sort of exemption around the qualifications. We do have a guideline there around the applying for the certificate of competence if you want any more details. So just briefly on this portfolio of evidence, as said, copy of a risk assessment you're involved in during the last 5 years. workplace inspections. I think all these things should be pretty basic for people to do. Don't judge us there on principle being spelt wrong with an LE, but yeah, on the point 3, review a principal hazard management plan and control plan. So yeah, we're going to look. I'm sure again you've been involved in these things, various places. If you're in from interstate, obviously don't have a principal hazard control plan necessarily, or overseas, that's fine. Just show us a control plan or a principal hazard management plan equivalent that you've been involved in. Whether it's fire explosion, or airborne contaminants, whatever. So just mechanical engineering control type stuff, or electrical, whatever it may be. But just show us something that's an equivalent to what sits in here in New South Wales, and we'll happily recognise it for the purpose of the portfolio. Just showing shift handover reports, shift work plans, or compliance reports, a copy of the shift handover report. Work with us on that if you're a consultancy group or something like that and you haven't actually been on site dealing with shift handovers. That's fine. Let us know. We can grant exemptions for those sorts of things. That's okay. Again, just let us know early if that's an issue. If you can demonstrate you've done that at some point in your career, then we'll happily work something out on that. Deliver workplace and training program. Look, this is just some sort of toolbox talk or some sort of program you've been involved in where you've gone to train workers. Would be fine. And just if you can find a copy of the slides that you presented or report you presented or whatever, that'd be great. And then any sort of procedures or SWPs or however you call them in your work, swims, whatever, whatever colloquialism you use at your operation, but just one of those that you've been involved in developing and rolling out over the past 5 years. All right, so some of this, again, appreciate this may seem repetitive and somewhat trivial, but a lot of applicants run into issues going through this process. So just bear with me. Get onto the portal, go to the Mine Workers portal inside the Resources Regulator portal, and you go into Certificate of Competence, then click on Apply for a Certificate of Competence. So fill out the application form, and we've got some examples. So we've got a little example on our website there of just how you could go about setting out the practical experience component. So all those, all the columns in that need to be completed. It says here, or you risk your having your application being rejected. You can imagine it's a little bit different for our competency because so few people do it, but for the larger competency groups, it can be really problematic trying to go back and forth with candidates. So with our ticket, you do have the luxury of the fact that so few people do it. So we have the ability to be a little bit more lenient on that aspect, provided you're having a good go. If there's a couple of holes in it, we'll work with you and we'll try and figure it out. So regarding the experience component, it must be verified experience, verified. So we need it signed off basically by a supervising manager. And really, ultimately, I really want to see the person that was holding the ticket at the time sign off on it. Yeah, there's a drafting function in the portal too, so you can just save it without submitting. Yeah, as you figure out, as you put your application in. So you might have multiple sessions as you go. There's an application fee. I think it's $200 once you submit the application. The next submit the application form, and you haven't chosen to. The next step is to register to sit the upcoming exam. So that'll be the next session. Once you've submitted your application, select the exam and the date, register to sit the exam. So we'll make this very clear here. No late registrations will be accepted. And again, it just keeps bouncing back to, I've said it multiple times already, and I'll probably continue to say it throughout this talk, but we really want to make sure that if you that you apply early, so we can address any issues that you might have in the application process. So we've done through a long process over the last few years, this blueprinting process. So we've made a lot of changes to how we actually determine competencies. It's a lot more streamlined process now, but I just make it really clear. So if a candidate has been unsuccessful in any 2 certificate of competency exam round attempts, they must submit a plan form explaining how they'll prepare for passing future exam attempts. This form will be submitted as part of their application to resit the next round of exams to the resources regulator. It is optional for other candidates to complete this form, and it's strongly recommended to complete it to prepare best for the exam. So previously we just had applicants continue to apply, continue to sit exams, and continually fail. Now applicants really need to be able to explain to us what have they done differently if they do fail, what have they done in the intervening period, what have they been studying, what have they been doing to get better to ultimately be successful in the next application. So when completing application, you then got to register to sit in the exam. Look, go through here and you complete the form. It's pretty self-explanatory what you're going to complete, whether it's the oral, whether it's the written, or it's a new application. So post oral exam, you will select yes for previously applied question and pay the application. So that's basically that last point there is if you've passed the written exam but you failed the first oral exam, you got to apply to sit the next. But you have to keep applying just as you go through the process. So once you've submitted your application, it'll be reviewed. Any inadequate details or attached documents will be communicated to you via email. Once application is checked for completeness, documents, portfolio, practical experience verified, your application will be sent for endorsement to the convener, which should be me. And the convener will endorse your application. It will be sent to the mining competency manager for approval. Once application has been approved, your exam status will change in the portal from expression of interest to waitlist. And you can see this via the mining workers portal. You will be invited to sit the exam via an email closer to the exam date. So to remove any, if you're curious, we'll be doing this written exam online, so you won't have to get to Maitland or wherever else. It'll all be done online, which makes things a fair bit easier. It'll take a lot of stress out of trying to organise you, where you're going to be sitting the exam, etc., to get to a location. So our written exam will be online, and for the oral, we'll basically give you a choice. We've got some people got different preferences for either, but we'll give you a choice to do it online or in person. Probably, I mean, our preference would be to do it in person, but we understand, these things can be hard. We've got each one of the panel members is busy and they work on active mines all around the state of New South Wales. And trying to get them to a central location along with the actual candidate can be difficult. The logistics can be tough. So we're sympathetic. We'll work around that, depending what everyone can do. So within the invitation, so yeah, you'll receive an invitation to detail the exam, your sitting and certification, what the fee is. Instead of taking the curiosity of the location part out, but the date and time. Important information noted in the attendance comments. So you must accept or decline the exam invitation. So that's basic for in the portal, just to make sure it completes, and then you'll get a link. If you decide that you can no longer sit the exam, you must withdraw your invitation in the portal. If sitting multiple written exams, you will receive a separate email invitation for each exam. Keep your contact details. Yeah, this is a big one where it's actually a little bit of legislation even for practice certificate holders that they must keep the regulator updated regarding your current contact details. So please, going forward throughout your career, if you're successful and you get your ticket of competency as you go through your career and you work around the place, if you change address, please update it in our portal. We're not going to actively chase you. It's a big problem. Obviously, we work in a very transient industry. And so it's incumbent on you to keep your details up to date here with the New South Wales regulator. Again, there's another link there just to the certificate of competency process. And you can also phone the competency unit if you get stuck as well. Just to put it in perspective, we have the guys at competency unit tell you how many tickets, how many people pass through, but I think we've got 13 competencies all up we manage as a resources regulator. Now we're by far the smallest. They're dealing with a lot of people, and each time there's an interaction with someone, because there's these really basic steps they haven't followed, it just complicates, it just makes their job a lot harder. They've got so many resources. So that's one of the main purposes of this briefing session, is really to try and make sure there's no mistakes in that process, so we don't tie up any more of their time than we need to. Okay, so just briefly on the purpose of the function. So we've got here all the different statutory functions we have in New South Wales mines. I won't go through them all, but the company set out in the framework are focused to ensure health and safety of mine workers. Separate from corporate knowledge and skills that mining companies, so I'm just going to read this slide just because I think it is important, that mining companies and other employees of the mine workers may see as important drivers of mine productivity and management. The framework provides a basis for the consistent, reliable assessment of the competence of people applying for a certificate of competence for a statutory function. So this is what it's talking about really is our guideline, the framework for which we use to assess candidates whether they should receive a ticket, deemed competent or not yet competent when they're running for their ticket. Certificates of competence are required. 14 practicing certificates. I've forgotten one there. Maybe it was one I forgot. You'll have to excuse me. I thought there was only 13. There's actually 14. For statutory function in New South Wales, statutory function requiring practice certificates are listed by class of mine. The competencies within the framework are arranged in domains, focus area, and level. So I'll go through that a little bit, but basically, because this is exercising the statutory function to be the MEM of underground mines, we're right up there at the very top of what's assessed, basically. Whereas when you're looking more at, say, deputy or a shift supervisor, etc., the criteria is different. It's going to be more practical focus. Okay, so all up. This will make more sense, and we'll go through this. This is a big part of why we hold this briefing session. This is really how we are going about assessing you. So there's 4 key domains that we're looking to deem you competent in. Okay, the first one is the statutory function and the regulatory requirements. So that's what to do with legislation and what the statutory function entails. Application and implementation of hazard management through technical knowledge. So that'll really be testing your understanding of the sort of the technical aspects of the competency. Situational awareness and risk management. So that's, and we'll go through some examples, but that's typically how you're going to manage a situation in a workplace and manage the risk around it in a real-time environment. And then domain 4 is all about how you work as a supervisor and supervising workers in the workplace. So each one of those functions, those statutory domains, is then broken down further into different focus areas. And we won't be testing each one of these focus areas in the exam, but we'll just take a sample of which ones we will test, and that will change from year to year as to which ones we'll actually test. So you can see, and this is all spelled out in all those documents I laid out earlier, so you can read all this quite easily on those links that on the previous slides. So domain 1, statutory function, regulatory competency. So we have 1.1, statutory function being examined and other relevant statutory function responsibilities. So yeah, safety management system. So we can test you on that, understanding of it, and the requirements, principal hazard management plans, all the legislative requirements around that, principal control plans, basically anything to do with legislation. This is just a little example of what you'll see in the documents that, as I said, there's links to. So as I alluded to before, again, the framework also articulates requirements for the statutory functions at 3 levels. So the lower level 1 is basically, as I said, this is more aimed at the practical shift by shift basis. So for the underground mine supervisors and also the open cut, under manager level, which is level 2, which is sort of that intermediate level, and then level 3 is obviously at DMM level or electrical engineering, etc. So it's the testing becomes, the testing becomes more onerous as you go up the levels. I think we're going to get too confusing if we go through this in detail, because it's all available in the framework. However, for us at level 3, I think you can see where we're getting to. Level 3, 1.1.3. No one understands the statutory responsibilities of their function and the function of those they supervise. I think that's pretty understandable why we want to assess that. It's pretty clear. Or 1.2.3, demonstrate in-depth knowledge and technical understanding in the development, supervision, monitoring, and review of safety management systems relevant to their statutory function. That's really important. One of the big issues we find when examining candidates is this constant trying deferral of responsibility when they go to answer questions. You're not in these roles to be an empty suit and to just do what some consultancy group or one of your other junior engineers or whatever tells you to do. You're there to actually critically analyze why you're doing things. There's a big potential, this ticket will manage any mine in the state, from large mines where you've got any number of resources through to tiny little shows where you're in. You've got to be able to make all these decisions on your own. So that's what we're going to be testing. You actually have the ability to do that. So when we write our questions, we basically, if you go through the details, we actually map the questions to those competencies, those different domains and frameworks. And every competency is assessed at least every 3 years. Every competency is assessed at least every 3 years or more often. So those subdomains I talked about before, so here 1.1, 1.2, 1.3, we'll just take a basket of those and test them in each exam. But over the course of 3 years, we'll have tested all of them. I'll go through this a little more when I break down the oral and written exams around those 4 domains and what's tested in the oral versus what's tested in the written. But we make that really clear to the candidates that you'll have a real good understanding by the end of today exactly what we're looking for and what you need to study for. This last point here, if you have to sit a post-oral exam after your first, you will be reassessed for all competencies each time. This is an important thing. So say you sit your oral exam and you're deemed competent and you get asked, say, 4 questions and you're deemed competent in 3 of those questions, and yet you fall over in the 4th related to a specific competency. Say for argument's sake, it's how to do a risk assessment, for example. But you fail in that, well, the next oral exam you do, we go back to square one, despite the fact you may be tested on all the 3 previous competencies that you did pass. You could be tested on all those. You're not just going to be tested on that one thing you failed. So you basically go back to square one. Hopefully it makes sense. Yeah, so just in case there's some people who are still familiar with the old system, it's all finished now, but you have the written exam, achieve a pass mark, and then progress to sit the oral exam. Otherwise, if you fail the written exam, that's it. The exam's closed out. Once you're assessed as competent, then we just recommend to the chief inspector that you receive a ticket. It's the chief inspector that endorses you for your ticket. We just make a recommendation. And here you go. If you fail your first, you're allowed to sit a second, but it has to be within 12 months. And then otherwise you go back to sitting the written all over again. If you fail that second oral, you go back to start and have to sit the written exam in the following year. Yeah. Show that. So, okay. So this will be a bit of a conflict of slides here. So first up, the written exam. So there's sort of two major parts to it. The first section will have 60 marks, part A, and you must be then competent in both of these. So part A and part B is that'll be focused more around those domains 3 and 4 around risk assessment and risk and managing issues in the workplace. So it's the old ANTS basic component, which is the associated non-technical skills. Okay, so if you're going to keep a slide, this is a really good one to keep. Okay, so if you want to screenshot a slide, this is a good one. Just so it lays out really clear what we're actually going to be looking for. So all the legislation will cover, and that'll be all in part A. Part A is mainly only focused on legislation and technical. So Explosives Act 2003, this is all the ledge you could be tested on, and regulations and explosive regs of 2013. Because it also, the Explosives Act and regs also invoke 2187. They also invoke 4326 and crucially the Australian Dangerous Goods Code and the Australian Explosives Code. So we expect you to be familiar with all that, right? So it's quite a body of study you need to know around explosives. We've got the WHS Act of 2011 and the regs of 2017. And then also we've got the WHS Mines Petroleum Sites Act 2013 and the matching regs of 2022. So there's a lot of ledge you need to learn. The technical component, again, remember this part, because we're running into a lot of issues with candidates around the technical part. So mine, planning, and design, okay? We expect you to be able to plan a mine, design a mine, be able to perform the function of a mining engineer. I'd be familiar with all different aspects of mining methods, etc., and the safety implications for workers under different scenarios. Because the reality is, you can be at a mine and find ore body, and all of a sudden, hey, we're trying to try a different mining method, etc., to extract some ore body. You need to be able to know the implications of that and understand that ore body. The implications for worker health and safety of using different mining methods, etc. You need to understand ventilation. There's an issue we've run into with a lot of candidates that have no real working understanding of mine ventilation. Obviously, absolutely critical to the safe functioning of a mine. So you are likely to get asked questions about ventilation, technical questions about ventilation. Geotech. Again, it's a critical aspect of managing a mine. We expect you to have a good understanding of geomechanics and geotechnical engineering. Now, we are not going to get you to, we're not going to give you a formula sheet with formulas and you're going to have to come in and do a large array of formulas, etc. Right? We're not asking any of that. You're going to have to demonstrate, however, a good working understanding of the overall concepts of how stress and strain work, etc., and how stress is redistributed. Surveying. So typically you're going to have the surveyors work underneath you. Obviously, I think it's important for everyone to understand. We actually run a course here internally in the regulator, and we encourage everyone to do the Learning from Disasters course. Obviously, a lot of the things we do in our industry, a lot of the safety protocols, everything else we do, it's all been written in blood, all of it. And one of the lessons we've unfortunately learned, and what's sort of come with the modern iteration of New South Wales Mines Regulator, the resources regulator, is really the surveying error that happened at Gretley in 1996, and we also had the fatality at Olympic Dam as well. So we expect you to understand some basic concepts around surveying. We're not going to test you so much on our TRGs, MDG 15, and the safety alerts and bulletins. We're not going to test you directly on those. But it's fair to say that if we provide examples or we provide scenarios, etc., there's a good chance that there'll be a reference to some of those instances that have occurred. We try to keep our exams relevant to what's happening in industry. So if we provide examples, typically they're real world examples. So if you follow those closely, they may help you when you ultimately get a question, because you can say, hey, this has been happening in the industry. This may be some of the potential solutions that are out there. So I suggest just keeping an eye on what we're doing regarding safety alerts and bulletins and our updated TRGs. And there's human competencies, which those last two. So we spoke about that bit. So this will be in part B. It's also covered a bit in that portfolio we've already discussed. The human competency component will also have some technical knowledge, because when we say pose an emergency scenario to you, well, you're going to have to understand some basic technical aspects of mining to be able to do it. We also say in this, whereby, particularly in the oral exam, so in the oral exam, we're not testing your legislative knowledge at all. So we will not be, provided you pass the written, we're not going to sit there and get you to be able to cite legislation again. That's it, that's done. We've tested that. But if you say something sort of outrageous in the oral, say, for example, and don't laugh, we've had this at a few examples of this, where it's like, oh, you're going to have an incident, what are your first steps to do? And I'll say, oh, we're going to call the lawyers, and we're not going to tell them the resources regulator. We've had that. So you just have a blatant breach of legislation, or we're going to say, I've got a stuck loader in a stope. What are you going to do? And they say, well, I'm going to walk out into the stope and retrieve it. Some sort of glaring failure provided of legislation. But other than that, we're not testing legislative knowledge particularly in the oral. So for the written exam, just some examples of technical questions. So, what type of stress is most affected by the stoping sequence? Well, A, there are abutment stresses. Or B, next one, why would an underground mine have a mine local grid than simply using NGA 94 or whatever? And they said orientation of the ore body, easy coordinate numbers, the Z plane not ready to sea level, etc. So just teasing out a little bit what you know about surveying. So I think this slide's probably really important too, if you're trying to get, so you must be deemed competent in that technical domain. Okay, so I'd capture this. So candidates must be able to demonstrate, because we've had a lot of issues with previous candidates. Candidates must be able to demonstrate an intermediate understanding of relevant technical matters that relate to the health and safety of workers. This includes mine planning. We've already spoken about these issues, but you just get some specific clauses to look at just to give you a bit more of a guideline. Geotech engineering, surveying, and ventilation, of course. You expect to be able to answer questions, to be able to question the advice given by any of these disciplines, and advice given I've slightly written that wrong, but in any of these disciplines, and only have knowledge and confidence to ignore them, nor amend it or accept it. And that's really the big thing. You can't just say, I don't know, say, for example, we pose a question, we found this huge ore body and we want to put 4 new trucks in the system and 2 new loaders and all this gear, and we need to upgrade the vent system. We can't just say, well, I'm just going to get a vent consultant to tell me what to do. You're going to have to actually explain to us how you will do it. Otherwise, you're doomed to a fail. And please ignore the reference to, there's a few typos in this. I'll get to that later, but you must demonstrate you can satisfy. Yeah, so basically under the part 4, part 25 of our LEGS, not 2014, but the 2022 LEGS, that just teases out exactly what the statutory function is and what your responsibilities are. Can you just write that down to, just as a note, Linda, because I've just got to change that. I don't know how 2014 still got it there. So these are just some examples, some LEGS type questions. Underground mine plans to develop a new mine entry. What must the operator? Oh yeah, you'll be familiar with this one, of course. What must the mine operator submit to the regulator prior to development? High-risk activity notification. So we're not, when it comes to legislation, we're not going to say to you, cite where what clause deals with working from heights, or what clause deals with seismicity or whatever. All right, we're not here to see that you can recite legislation. We want you to be able to demonstrate you have a good, sound, working knowledge of the legislation. Like, we understand that, in practice at a mine, you've got the ability to go back and tease out exactly what the leg says regarding a matter. What we want you to know, though, is that a scenario arises in a workplace. You go, hang on, there's a legislative provision around that. I know there is. And you've got the ability to identify that and then go back and just see the exact specifics of what it's saying in the ledge, and then come back and enact that in a working context. So this is not meant to be some examination of you having memorized every little piece of legislation, but you need to be able to demonstrate a good working knowledge in the context of what you'll be doing in your role. And when you're answering the questions, just we're going to give obviously extra points if you're seeing that you can answer them in total. So I've got examples. This next question here: when must the mine report an unintended vehicle rollover as a dangerous incident? So obviously, typically things in that examples to say all the time, and whenever there's a vehicle, but the actual ledge says only if the vehicle is 1,000 kilos in weight or greater. So saying in example 2, note the key point of 1,000 kilos or greater in weight. Simply stating any rollover will not generate full marks. So obviously it's good that you've identified this rollover to be reported, but we want to actually, that'll be the difference between like getting full marks or not, if that makes sense. How it's demonstrating how much knowledge you have of the ledge. Here are some abbreviations that can be helpful. Look, we're super flexible on language and everything else. We understand people are sitting this ticket that have worked in multiple jurisdictions. There might be Canadians that call a loader a scoop tram, or I can't even remember what they call a jumbo box in Broken Hill. I can't remember. They've got a certain word for it. I can't remember now. But there's all this different terminology in the mining industry. That's fine. We'll figure it out. Okay, WA they'll call it a bogger. Here probably a loader. Any issues around terminology or spelling or whatever, don't get too stressed about it. As long as it's understandable to us, that's fine. Remember, those who are assessing your exam, they've worked in jurisdictions or right across Australia and the world, so we're familiar with any sort of terminology, etc. So some tips: study groups are good. Complete previous papers, time management. I didn't talk about this. I should have talked about this. So with the written exam, both the written and the oral, is less is more. All right. Like, and I've been doing this job for probably 4 years now, 5 years. So I'm getting better at actually writing the exams. Previously would write questions where it's explain how you would, I don't know, for example, you've decided to onboard a contractor to do a big mill relining, for example. How would you go about doing that? How would you integrating their contractor management system with your safety management system? Say that's a question. And then we get these long essay responses when really we're only after like short, sharp answers. So you'll see now the way that the exams are structured, we're really trying to keep it tight. We don't want long-winded answers. It's going to be really tempted to sit there and write lots and lots of stuff. But the reality is, it's not really what we're looking for. We're just seeing that you understand either the legislative component, the component of how to manage workers. There's 4 domains basically, and providing a big long statement where starting to write the question so that it avoids you feeling like you have to do that, because I understand you're there, you've got 3 hours, you're like, maybe I should just give them more and more details. We're not really looking for that. We're looking for just the short, sharp answer. So less is more typically. You'll have plenty of time in the written exam, provided on that basis. So that you'll see some example exams. We'll have a example exam on the website. You'll see how it's structured. You'll have lots and lots of time. So don't feel like there'll be any real time pressure. There really won't be. Let's say here, dot points are okay, acronyms okay, legible writing. It's not even an issue now because it's all online. Oh, here we go. Yeah, we accept any recognized jargon. Yeah. Another big thing too, I'm really not into trick questions. So say for, I remember having to do these sort of things at school, playing with and or, like say a multiple choice question. I don't think top of my head here. The Australian Explosives Code is referenced in which legislation? The Explosives Act of 2003, the Act 2003, the Explosive Regs and Explosive Regs of 2003, the Explosives Act of Explosion, like trying to confuse you with the word and or across multiple choice questions. We really don't do that, all right? Like, this is not a test of your English skills or interpretation skills. It's not. We're not there trying to trick you. Okay, does that make sense? The answer will be really clear and explicit. The correct answer will be really clear and explicit. Yeah, we run into this problem. It's a little bit easier in the orals, but just answer the questions being asked and stay on topic. We're structuring the exams more and more now, so that's a lot easier to do. They're all sort of short answer type questions, no long-winded, no sort of open-ended type questions. But really try and stay on topic. And the other point here, concise answers, avoid corporate speak. Okay, so sitting there saying we're presenting a problem, saying, oh, we're going to do a risk assessment, and I'm going to convene a whole heap of people, and then invoke all these corporate processes. Like, fine, you're going to do a risk assessment, then what? We're actually looking for the tangible, actual outcome. Like, say, for example, we give a scenario of there's been a misfire, and running a quarry, and there's a misfire, a big misfire. How are you going to manage it? And so, well, I'm going to, do a risk assessment and involve all these people, and we have this big meeting, and then we've got all these different corporate processes we're going to run through. Like, we're not here to hear all the corporate speak, okay? If you say you're going to do a risk assessment, that's fine. You make mention of that. But what we're ultimately trying to tease out is your knowledge of how you're going to deal with that misfire. You, not someone else, not the shot firer, not some consultant, but you. That you're the person who's ultimately making the decision. And that goes to this next point. Take ownership of the situation. Do not answer the question with, oh, we'll get someone to tell me how to manage the problem, and then do what they tell me. So hopefully I've made that pretty clear. In the written, it's a lot harder because you don't have the feedback of the oral. In the oral exam, we're not going to do lots and lots of prodding of you or coming back at you, but we will, to get you back on the right path. We've got the ability to sort of steer you back onto the right path, start meandering off it. But in the written, obviously, we don't have that opportunity. So it's incumbent on you to make sure you answer the questions being asked and not just invoke a whole heap of corporate processes. This is just a redundant slide. So for the oral exams, they typically take an hour. We'll have up to 4 on the panel. Typically it's 3, but sometimes we have 4. You do have the opportunity to seek clarification for any questions. We will be taking notes as we go, so don't freak out about that. We just take notes, and that's basically for in case just so that there's a record basically of what your answers are. So we do take notes. And so then if there's any questions about what your answers were, we've taken notes exactly of how you've answered questions. So this issue of prompting, we will prompt you from time to time, but that factors into, you do sort of get marked down if you continually need prompting. And then we'll get to a point Or we say, okay, that's the end of the, we'll move on to the next question. So there will be some prompting, but in it, because it's not always, some candidates, the situation is not always clear, but there's a limit to how much prompting we'll do, and then we'll move on to the next question. Yeah, so again, take your time to think about the question prior to giving your answer. We're looking for a structured, logical, and ordered approach. And that particularly goes with the scenarios. The oral exams where you're going to get asked scenarios, and it could be like you're pretty much guaranteed to get some sort of emergency question asked of you, so some sort of emergency scenario. And all those emergency scenario questions are going to be based on real world experience from the panel. So they're typically an incident that one of us have been involved in personally. So they're real world examples. Or you get asked like a management type question, how you're going to, it could be as simple as, well, not as simple as complex as, oh, well, you're at a mine and you decided to implement a new software program, completely new software program. So everyone's going to have to use, they were previously using Datamine, for example, and they're all going to move across to Deswik or whatever. How are you going to do that and maintain a safe workplace? There's no confusion. The surveyors, everyone understands all the colouring conventions, naming conventions, whatever else, and how you deal with worker resistance on issues or whatever. So there's sort of two parts to it. That could be an emergency question or that manual management style question. For oral, recommended doing some mock orals with someone you trust, an experienced person you know, or they can post some emergency scenarios to you. And again, we go back to having that structured approach and you'll be able to demonstrate that. It's that last point. Yeah, the need for being mastery mines across the state has always been an important and encouraged aspect of the candidate's preparation. So we really encourage, and I don't want to put words in the mouth of other mining companies across the state at all, but if candidates feel they're not familiar enough or don't feel confident enough with certain mining methods or types of mine or locations or whatever, we really encourage candidates to reach out to other mines across the state, ask for tours, ask for advice, ask, can I go and see how you do different things? So for example, you work at a sub-level caving operation, you say, you know what, I really need to know about an evoker style mining method or something like that I've never seen before. We really encourage you to go out and actually approach those mines and say, can I come out there for the day and have a look at how you go about doing it? 2 days or however long. And typically you'll find, mines are more than willing to share for their knowledge for candidates seeking their ticket. But that's going to prepare you best for your oral exam, particularly. So this is some of the favorites we've got. This is taken from the quarry, guys. Remember, this ticket allows you to manage open cut, not just an underground mine. Yeah. How would you manage some of these little scenarios? Gets you thinking a bit. So misfires, obviously, bit of fly rock, a few fly rock issues, a couple of quarries. The world of quarrying is a bit different to the world of underground mining, but yeah, the one with the rock in the computer is always one that gets me thinking, that's for sure. So how would you go about managing those sort of scenarios in the quarrying context? But similar look at us, it's for underground. And you'll be also asked, as part of that, we're sort of giving you a bit of a hint here, but as part of that systematic approach to dealing with scenario, we're also going to ask you, and this is all on the ledge, but how are you going to actually deal with scene preservation? How are you going to call it? Are you going to contact the regulator? Who are you going to report it to? How's all that going to work? So that'll be part of what we're looking for in your answer when we're doing an emergency management type style question. So regarding the results, so we'll be notified typically up to 6 weeks. It depends a little bit like what the workloads are. As we just said, there's 14 different components, 14 different competencies, and things wax and wane a bit regarding how busy the competence unit is to actually endorse the results. So that can sometimes take some time. Sometimes it goes really quick. Other times it can take a little time, just depending on how much demand there is. It's only a limited team there, and they're always very busy. You'll be advised of the examination outcome, for examination via email. Copies of the paper will be published, so candidates can go back and have a look at it. If a candidate is within 5 marks to pass, their paper will be reviewed by a member of the examination panel who is not involved in original marking to confirm the marks awarded are correct. So regarding the examination process, like the actual marking exams, we go and sort of mark it ourselves, and then we get together and we sort of compare notes and we go and form a judgment when they're really close. I can be, we'll sort of critically analyze exactly what we got in that written exam, and then and make a sort of a consensus amongst the 3 of us. You'll get some general comments, some general feedback. Typically, if you pass, you just pass. If you're deemed competent, it will just say deemed competent, and nothing or that. If you are deemed not yet competent, we'll put some marks as to why, some points as to why. Because our exam is so small, I think last year was only 1 candidate. Yeah, last year was only 1 written exam candidate. Maybe we get more this year, but sometimes there's none. So typically there's 1, maybe 2, where they don't like to publish any general comments. So we don't do that because it's just too easy to identify who they relate to. And then with the oral exam, you'll be advised via email. Just feedback on orals. So same thing. You can actually request. You can get some feedback. You can request it just simply by email, and you will get a little. We prepare a little note as to what you got right or wrong. And said again, if you're deemed competent, we don't really say too much. It's more if you're deemed not competent, we'll just say some general comments. There, we don't like to get too specific in that feedback. You'll just get general comments the way you fail. It won't be like really specific. Please don't contact any of the examiners directly. Appreciate the people sitting this ticket will probably have all our numbers and have dealt with us on various matters in industry for whatever reason, but please don't contact us directly about your exam results. Just ultimately, the way it works is that we make a recommendation to the board and to the chief inspector. So we aren't the ultimate arbiters of whether you pass or fail. It's actually the chief inspector of the board that's the arbiter. We simply make a recommendation. A request for additional feedback may be considered by the examination panel. Those may be declined. Like, we may give more specific feedback if we feel there's some specific need for it, but generally you'll be given just feedback for each question. You can be given general feedback as to why you failed each one. So you are entitled to a review. Candidates and review if they have justification that assessment outcome is deficient or in error. So you can contact this competency team and they'll work through that with you. You must submit the review form on the fine mining workers portal within 5 days of having received the feedback. Provide a detailed justification as to why you believe the assessment outcome is deficient or in error. If the justification is sufficient to base a review upon, the payment link will be provided. So they actually costs a little bit of money. I'm not sure what the fee is. And then we have a review process. As an independent person will come in, they'll actually review the marks, how they were assessed, and then you'll be notified of the outcome of the review. So just in conclusion, look, this presentation will be put up on our website. So I recommend, those couple of slides I pointed out, just pointing out exactly we're running a test regarding a couple of issues regarding legislation, technical matters, etc. There'll be a recording of this also published. And yeah, the Q&A session of this is just going to follow right now. We won't be recording. So that's it. There are the numbers there, the competency unit, to give them a call. As I said before, they're quite busy with those 14 competencies they manage. So they're more than happy to talk to you, but please check all the resources they have on their website first. It's highly likely the answer to your question already lies on their website, without sort of just questioning them about things that it's freely available. But if you really have something you need to address, then by all means give them a call. And with that, that's the end of the presentation. I'll now open up for Q&A.